I trained in Belgium, medical training, became a GP, spent 18 years as a single-handed practitioner on Alderney in the Channel Islands, which was, to me, the starting point of everything else, in a sense that it is a small, isolated location, small number of people, the kind of people that you meet in your surgery and the same people you meet in the shop, in the pub, in the restaurant, on the street, on the beach. That was a good thing. The other thing was that the medicine in the Channel Islands is private medicine, which meant that people had to pay to come and see me. And so generally it happened quite a bit that people, I would give them prescriptions, obviously. I would give them prescriptions and treatments, and you don't see them back. So as far as your notes are concerned, problem solved. Until you see them 3 or 4 days later in the pub or on the street, and they go, "Hey, those tablets you gave me, they are no good. I flushed them down the loo. Gave me stomach ache. Rubbish things." You go, oh, okay. Now, if that happens once or twice, you may go, well, tough, bad luck. But you start to notice. You start to notice that more and more there are things not really working, or making people worse, or introducing another problem. And I can't run away from it. I'm there, I'm living there. I know these people, When things aren't working, or when medicines aren't working, and the specialist, he's the expert, says, "Oh, they're probably not taking their tablets." Well, if you know these people, you know how their family life functions, where they go to drink, where they do their shopping, what they think about, the world, whatever. And you go, no, that's not him. He would do that. He would take his tablets. They're just not working. Why not? Specialist doesn't want to know, or just goes, "Oh, try something else." And I learned over there, I got stuck. I didn't get not the help that I wanted, not from the authorities, not from medical profession. And I still wanted to help people, still wanted to make people better. I couldn't live with the thought that I was treating people were paying me to help them, and they weren't getting any better. I thought that was intrinsically wrong. So you then come across, it's amazing how things happen, somebody comes in and puts a magazine on the table and say, "Hey, there's something in here about, just saying, this vitamin helping my arthritis. What do you think?" Go, "I don't know, never heard of that." So you take it home, you read it, started reading more and more, then starting to find out, because it's an awareness thing as well. I became aware of the fact that all across the islands there were people doing all kinds of, say, healing work, therapies, whatever, based on all kinds of theories and all kinds of input. So for about 10 years I went to these people. I invited them over to the island. We did weekends on all kinds of stuff, introduced them to people, did clinics, worked with them. Some dropped off very quickly, others I dropped because I couldn't identify with what they were doing. But in general terms, I went through learning most, alternative, as they're called, therapies. And that didn't satisfy me either, because I came to the same conclusion. My observation was that all therapies, including, the Western medical system, they all have positive results. They work, but not all the time and not for everybody. And that was my problem. How do you then get to this individual, this particular individual here and now? How do you know what would help him or her? If somebody says to me, oh, this therapy is really, really good, 95% of the time people get better. Oh, that's okay. So what do? We prescribe that 100% of the time. And we pretend that everybody gets better when they do that therapy. What about the 5%? The truth, of course, is that there is no therapy that actually gives you a 95% guarantee improvement. So it dawned on me that, in essence, any healthcare system should be based on individuals and not on groups. It is no good saying to a group of people, oh, this is good for you, this is healthy, this could make you better. It's about the individual suffering. So I started to realize that I needed to learn an awful lot more. And the study hasn't finished. Why? Because there is far more to learn than I can cope with in one lifetime. But it has resulted in me not having to run after every new single therapy that comes on the market or that comes into my field of vision. It's very quickly, what is it based on? It should be individually based. That's one thing. Secondly, if you're running after trying to solve physical problems on a physical level, you're on a dead-end street. Life isn't about the physical matter. 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, Einstein and his mates found out and told us that matter is energy. It's, for want of a better word, it's fixed energy, but it's energy. So the matter is made from that energy. And it's very clear, science knows how that is done. So it's not a mystery anymore. We also know from that if I want to change matter, I just change the energy from which this matter is made, and the matter changes shape, format, and function. It's simple. So if I have a piece of matter that is not doing the right job, if you like, is not functioning very well, a living matter, whether it's a tree or a bee or an elephant or it's a human being, change the energy that surrounds that matter and you'll see the function change. And if we bear that in mind and we look around us very closely, very carefully, then we see that happening all the time. It's about energies. It isn't about changing matter. No. One example. The function of my stomach, my digestion. Right? I'm walking through the kitchen, I'm preparing my meal, I'm whistling, the radio is on, I'm whistling a tune, I'm really happy, I'm preparing my meal, I'm hungry, I'm looking forward to eating that. Telephone goes. Pick up the phone and somebody at the other end says, they've just found your mother dead. All of a sudden, my stomach won't work anymore. It doesn't want to eat. It doesn't want to accept anything anymore. Digestion is finished. Right? What has physically happened? Nothing. Same stomach. But the energy in which I function has, with that one sentence, finished. It's changed. So it's all about the energy of life. Life is energy, nothing more than that. And if you want to influence that properly, then one, of course, you should know as much as there is to know and as much as we can know, and that will continue, that knowledge. You need to know as much as you can know about life, that particular energy or expression of the energy. And two, you would then have to find a way of changing that energy. Now, humans have got the capacity of making everything extremely complicated. They love it. Why? Because then I see experts of details coming up everywhere. And what we lose is an overall sight. We lose the picture of what the entire thing would look like. We make things complicated in order to find out that it's really very simple. And I think that is what we're doing at this moment in time. I think all the I wouldn't say that, but the alternative therapies, they're looking at things from a too small area, and they're making things too complicated. Too much focus on detail, and in other words, they're still stuck with the Western type medicine thinking, and that is, you're tired. Okay, you're tired. Well, we'll do some investigations. Oh, you're short of vitamin B12. That is causing your tiredness. With all the others, where vitamin B12 is perfectly normal and is still tired, that doesn't make any difference. The vitamin B12 doesn't make any difference. So why should it make any difference to this other person who is tired? It's a detail. Maybe the tiredness comes from something that is much bigger or stands above it, hangs above it. And in this case, it expresses itself through a low level of vitamin B12. And in that case, something else. But the more details that we find, the more we find that is wrong. In other words, the more expressions we find of what is really wrong. The tiredness expresses itself in different ways in different people. And rectifying those details doesn't actually solve the problem. It doesn't get them less tired. What solves the problem is finding out what hangs above it. And then you always have to leave the matter behind. You always have to think in terms of what energy is causing this, or what are the energetic influences that are causing it. Again, it's never one thing. Well, to me, I think the step to studying homeopathy was the way to learn, my first way to learn a bit more about energies and how they influence people, or how energies are expressed into the function of the person. And homeopathy taught me to learn, to think about the various details and putting them together. As a GP, I was taught that the pain I have in my right big toe has nothing to do with my headache. In homeopathy, you can learn that any kind of signal, any kind of sign comes from that same person, and therefore has a connection to a central point, being this is the person who expresses life in this and that way. And all these things are important. Some are more important, some are less important, but they all come from the same source. That is a fundamental shift in thinking. And that is also, I think, one of the reasons why you cannot put the two together. You cannot have a combination or a therapy that combines Western medicine and homeopathy. Either you think in terms of the details are the most important thing and they're all separate. So my headache is caused by eating too much cheese, and my big toe is caused by a bunion, and the two have nothing to do with one another. Or you think, oh, that's a nice detail, and there's a detail, and the way he sleeps or whatever. All of that is part of who this person is, and the details are just fitting into one big puzzle. They're not different puzzles to be solved by different specialists. And that, I think, to me was a major shift in thinking. From then on, I completely stopped thinking. I refused to stop thinking in terms of details and separation. What is really important to me is, it still is the same, is helping people. But I now realize that it is much more about me understanding myself and life through how I experience it, and try to fit this knowledge into patterns and frameworks and themes that people can comprehend and that they can follow, and make it simple. I always start off with complicated stuff, lots of details, lots of things, and I try to fix it together so that it becomes simple to understand. So that is really important to me. Now, as far as therapies and medicine is concerned, I think what is important to me is that power is shifting back from the expert who is living outside of me in an ivory tower, pretending that if he has a look at my scans and my blood results and my test results, then he can actually determine what I need. He doesn't actually have to speak to me. Actually, he would be very happy if I never opened my mouth, because that confuses him. And that power should shift back to the individual. The main message, I think, that we, at this moment in time, that people need is that the individual is worth something, and that the individual has knowledge, and that the individual can do a lot of stuff by himself, sometimes with a little bit of help. The help, it comes from outside. That help should only be targeting what that individual wants. Even if I, as a therapist, may think, oh, I know what he needs. He needs this, that, and the other. If he's not receptive to it, one. If he's in a situation where he cannot do that or accept that, even accept the thinking, it's not going to happen. 3, it should be simple. So it should be simple for that person too. And the power, the decision should be given back to the individual. He or she should determine what they want to do with their lives. And the surrounding area, the surroundings should only be there to guide them and give them the information, informed choices that the medical profession is so keen on, at least to use the words, but their informed choices are, this is what we want you to know. If you dare to say, but I've read something else somewhere else, that's rubbish. It's rubbish. Why? Because I say so. And legally, the profession is right. Because it's amazing, but that's the way it is. Per definition, the definition is made by the medical authorities, but that's the definition, and that definition stands in court. The only person who is allowed to make a diagnosis is a qualified and practicing doctor. Nobody else can actually name a problem, a disease. So that is one reason why the medical profession is fighting so hard to stop any alternative therapy or therapist claiming that they can rectify this or rectify that. Because they're the only ones that have that power of diagnosing and treating. So from the moment somebody or a group of people, therapists, start advertising that these are the diseases that they can help, they're actually breaking the law. That I think is frightening. Yeah, because it puts a definite wall around healthcare. Hence, all these people, all these alternative therapists, they're aiming to get underneath the umbrella of the healthcare system. They want to work for a doctor's surgery. If they get a job there as a reflexologist or a massage therapist or whatever, then they're very, very happy. But the point is that the doctor remains the one person in charge. He is seeing people, diagnosing people, and prescribing the treatment. So he's telling the alternative therapists, say, what they need to do, how often, everything. That defeats the whole object, the whole purpose of the exercise. The exercise of being alternative is to do it differently. You're not doing anything differently if you're thinking in the same way, and if you let somebody else tell you what you need to do. Yeah, I'm very disappointed when clients of mine go, oh no, I go and see my homeopath. I don't take any medicine. I go and see my homeopath. But with this problem I've got now, he said to me that I definitely needed to go and have a scan because I needed to take some antibiotics, or I needed to take, my arthritis got so bad I needed to take some steroids. I go, what? Okay, now forget it. But to me, that puts a big question mark on what goes underneath that label, that these people have got certificates saying that they are homeopaths, but they're thinking as doctors, or they're afraid. I don't know whether that's a factor. They're afraid that if they continue and this patient ends up in hospital, and then a doctor goes, how did he get this bad? Oh, well, I went to see my homeopath and he said it would be all right. And then the whole thing could actually come down on the whole profession. Maybe there's a bit of fear in it. But it makes me afraid, because there's other signs that tells me that it's very difficult for Western people in general. And so out of this group of Western people come Western therapists. And I think it's very difficult for them to stop thinking the way that they've grown up to think. And what is that? That is, pay attention to the detail, never mind where it comes from. Don't ask the question why. Just treat the inconvenience, and then you'll be okay. And when I see signs of also called homeopathy, something like complex homeopathy, whereby the focus seems to lie on what medicine could we give them to get rid of headache or joint pains. Oh, I know. We'll have a look at homeopathic remedies. We put 3 or 4 together, and that will sort of do away with 80% of the symptoms, so we can just give them that. People happy. Yeah, but haven't you now switched back to symptomatic treatments, which is what the Western medicine does? And now you're treating it differently, and people are so happy. They come home and say, yes, taking a homeopathic preparation for my headaches. At least, I'm not taking any painkillers, or at least it's not chemical stuff. No, it's not chemical stuff, but your thinking hasn't improved. You're still thinking that your headache is the problem. And you stop looking at what is behind it. If I only can get rid of my headache, I could carry on as I'm doing. And I pretend that I'm okay, I'm healthy, nothing wrong with me. Oh yes, I know, I take something for this and something for that, but it doesn't bother me anymore, so I'm healthy. It's the thinking that needs to change. But that, I think, won't change until the power structure collapses. And that, in healthcare, that is, the Western medical system, with things like the NHS, wonderful system. We give you things for free. We'll look after you. Give your illness to us. We'll do something with it, and we'll give you health back. You stop thinking. You get it for free. So why are you moaning? And if now and again it goes wrong, hey, come on, it's free, isn't it? And we get to a point where now there are a growing number of people that when they're in real trouble, health-wise, they go back to that social system, not because they believe that chemotherapy will get rid of their cancer, but because it's free. Because it's free. And they believe they cannot afford anything else. But then again, money is energy too. So, if you believe that you're short of it, then you will never be able to run with it. You'll never be able to do anything with it. And that's, to me, that's the key point. It's the change in thinking pattern. It's got to go away from this matter thing into energy thing. From the little detail to what's the picture you're trying to paint here. I mean, just to clarify, I don't use homeopathy, right? Why? Because to me, it is too difficult. For me, it's too difficult. It's too difficult to get that bullseye shot off. Get it. Exactly right. And I thought, well, why would I spend the next 40 years trying to become proficient in this when there are other people walking around that are already proficient in it? So why don't I let them do their job? But to me, the principles of homeopathy, that is what I carry with me all the time. And wherever I get an opportunity, I point out to people that that's the homeopathic principle. And those are just the very basic things. You don't oppose things. You don't go and fight something. You go with it. You stimulate in the same way as what the problem is. You stimulate the living entity in the same way as what the problem is. Like for like. Happens everywhere in nature. Everywhere. Second principle that I find everywhere is lower concentration is more effective, is more powerful. Opposing, the Western medical system whereby the concentration has to go up. Once it doesn't work anymore, double the dose. It's the minute things that are much more powerful. And again, if you start looking around your own life and things that happen around you, the things that are said softly have much more impact than when you start shouting. It's the little things, just holding a hand. Say nothing, You don't have to rearrange somebody's life. Just to be there, just quietly. Just little things make huge differences. That is something that this society needs to learn again. They need to relearn that. We don't have to have rules for everything. There's one chap dying because he's been pretty stupid, and then the whole community will have to rearrange itself because you can no longer do this and you can no longer do that because somebody might die from it. And you hear things like, yes, I know it costs £20 million, but if it can save one life, it's worth it. I go, yeah, but what if you had this 20 million and you could save a life or make a bigger difference with every pound that you spend? Not put it all. So those things I point out to people all the time, and it stops people. They don't want to know, and particularly if I point these things out within the Western medical framework. If you really think about how can insulin injections, how can that on a chemical level, because it's all about chemicals and all about molecules, how can that molecule of insulin ensure that 70 trillion cells in my body open up the channels and allow sugar into the cell? It doesn't. It's a homeopathic principle. You give a tiny injection and it stimulates the whole system into doing something. They know that. They use it. They just don't use the words, and they just don't want to tell you how it works. It's amazing. They hide things, they build big towers, and they don't tell you. They hide things in those towers, they don't tell you what's in there. Just as even in the 1980s, there was a leaked document that the pharmaceutical company Mark Sharp and Dohme had all their medicines and all their research medicines. They all had them listed on a frequency spectrum. They didn't need to make the actual pills. They had the frequencies that were actually making the difference. They know. Yeah, but you can't sell frequencies. So they do know how life is structured and what are the most important things, but they don't want people to know. And that is why the science that the medical authorities are using is not actual science, because it doesn't include what science already knows. Everything is energy. Matter is made from energy. If you want to influence matter, you have to change the energy. They don't use those. That's not science. It isn't science. The starting point of their research isn't scientific either. A scientist observes something and asks the question, why is that happening? Or why is it happening now? Or why is it happening in this manner? And he's going to collect all kinds of information around that and trying to fit that together. Medical research starts from a different angle. It goes, for instance, it will say, can you prove a connection between smoking and lung cancer? And that's it. That is not a scientific question. The scientist would say, lung cancer, what's that? How did that happen? When does it happen? How? What are the elements? What is? It's not about finding a connection between, a substance in a tomato and how my digestive system works. That's not science. That is industry. Industry filling in the details that they want. On top of that, there are plenty of examples and leaked documents that prove that the industry asking a question like that, doing research, doing tests, double-blind studies and all that sort of stuff, and coming out with the wrong result, throw it in the bin, select different groups, start again. And they do that until they've got the result that they want. And then they publish it. And nobody knows about any other results. That's how you keep the fantasy and the illusion alive.